Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this 28mm scale Konflikt 47 King Tiger X with heavy railgun. This is obviously not a historical gun. Konflikt 47 is Warlord's alternate history game where World War II continued, presumably at least until 1947. Before we go too far, in the interest of disclosure, this kit was sent to me by Warlord free of charge with the intention of me making a video about it. Also, I'm a Warlord affiliate, so if you like this kit and you want one for yourself, you can purchase it through my affiliate link in the description and I'll get a small amount of money as well, which I will use to buy snacks. This is of course at no extra cost to yourself. Obviously you don't have to do that, but it would certainly be appreciated. Anyway, the back of the box shows a painted example of the tank with a figure for scale. The figure is not included, as it says. There's also a diagram showing how the metal and resin turret and gun go onto the plastic hull, and there's a couple of paragraphs of Konflikt 47 lore about the railgun and King Tiger X. Inside the box we find this: plastic sprues in a plastic bag, resin, metal and decals and some paper in bubble wrap, which is some nice free additional entertainment. Who doesn't like bubble wrap? The plastic in this kit is the same as the sprues you'll find in the regular King Tiger kit, complete with both versions of the turret. I did build that a couple of years ago, and there's a link to that in the description below. The images of the sprues and close-ups of the part is probably a bit better in this video, but in the interests of not repeating myself too much, I am going to condense the build of this one just a little bit, and I obviously won't be building the plastic turrets in this kit either. Of course, feel free to watch both videos. I would be a bad YouTube person if I didn't suggest that, but especially watch both if you want to see how the plastic Henschel turret builds up. I didn't build the Porsche one and neither turret is required for this build. As I probably said in the other video, the plastic parts in this kit are quite nice and neat. Some cleanup will of course be required, but not a whole lot. Some of the mounting holes have a bit of flash in them, but I have definitely seen much worse. The thing that makes this the King Tiger X is the resin turret, which is a single piece, and I was actually quite impressed with this. If you've been around here for a while, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of resin. It looks really neat. Also, it's pretty interesting. It's not modified too heavily, but there are enough bits and pieces added to it to make it look quite different from the regular turret. Very cool. It is a little bit messy at the bottom, but you can easily remove those little nubs there. The metal parts include the gun, which is enormous and quite heavy. This is pretty neat and doesn't need too much in the way of cleanup, just a little bit of mold line removal and it'll be ready for installation. The hatch is also metal. I wasn't sure if this bit next to it mattered, and I'm pretty sure it's just a chunk of metal sprue, but on the off chance it was something, I photographed it anyway. The hatch is a little bit rough around the edges, but you can easily clean that up with a file. A small decal sheet is also included. This is, as you can see at the top, a late war generic German vehicles decal sheet. I'm pretty sure this is the same decal sheet included with the Konflikt 47 Locust Panzermech which I built a while ago, and you should check out. This should work perfectly for a King Tiger X. The instructions are the same for the regular King Tiger kit, and to be fair, the hull is the more involved part of this build, so why go to the cost of a totally new instruction booklet? You could also build the plastic turret if you wanted, though the Porsche turret, cue the person in the comments who has to go on about how "Actually, Porsche never built that turret!" Anyway, the initial turret can't be used if you want the railgun turret, because there's an armoured collar that gets installed on the hull. That is, unless you want to get real fancy with magnets. Anyway, the instructions are pretty good, though do be careful to not miss the drilling instructions. I mean, who would miss those? Okay, let's get building. First, track assembly, which is fairly straightforward. I start by gluing the inner half of the drive sprocket onto the front like so, and then the outer sprocket half. This does have some D-shaped keying, but there is quite a bit of play here. I use the teeth on the inner sprocket as a visual guide for the outer teeth. The lower run of tracks comes next. There are guides in the bottom of the road wheels for this, and it's quite easy to get them on. Then comes the idler wheel, which also has keying and a little bit less play than the drive sprocket did. Then come the ends of the tracks. These aren't too hard to put on, just make sure that you're using the right part for the right end. Unfortunately, they don't fit perfectly and don't quite sit on the drive sprocket how I would like them to. I feel like there's a bit too much space around them. The rear track end part obviously comes next, and this is a bit better fit than the front one. And that's the tracks done. I apply a bunch of glue down the sides of the hull and attach the track assemblies to said hull. This is pretty easy, as you can imagine. You might have to clean some flash out of the mounting holes, but that's nothing too challenging. The rear hull part comes next. This goes into place about as easy as could be. I glue the top of the hull on next. I think I also said what could possibly go wrong. Well, it happened again. I forgot to install the machine gun. At least the hull part goes on pretty easily. There isn't really any keying, but you can line it up at the rear pretty easily. A little bit of pressure to minimize the gap at the front and the hull is together. I then glue the hull sides on. Again, a little bit of flash removal from the mounting holes was needed, otherwise they are very simple to put on. Another mistake I made, though not the worst mistake, was forgetting to drill the holes for the side skirts into the hull side parts. I decided to deal with this by just not having the side skirts, which is a fine choice anyway. It occurred to me afterward that doing this would mean that I would have two different King Tiger hulls, so they'll be easy to tell apart, if that ever becomes something that matters. Also, I didn't film it, but as you can see, I managed to kajigger the whole machine gun into place. It was kind of fiddly, so I would suggest installing it the proper way, but don't lose hope if you do forget to install it like I did. Now, let's quickly add some details, starting with the driver and machine gunner's hatches. You could model these open if you want, but I generally prefer closed. Vision devices for those positions comes next. These have some D-shaped keying, but it seems like you could force them in backwards anyway. Not sure how much that matters. Then, a headlamp. I did think about using some thin rod to create a power cable down the front of the hull for this, but obviously I didn't. Tools come next. An axe is mounted on the right side of the hull, from the tank's perspective that is, and a hammer goes on the left. This will be important when you must halt for hammer time, which I'm led to believe is quite an important time for tank crews. On the engine deck I install this thing, which looks like some kind of cooking pot. I mean, it probably isn't, but it does look a bit like one. It wouldn't be a Herbert Erpaderp video if there weren't parts that I couldn't identify. There is another flatter part that you could use here instead, but I chose this one because, well, I clipped it out first, so why not? To the right of that, behind the fan, goes a fire extinguisher. Guide pins help guide this perfectly into place, as guide pins should do. Back to the front of the hull I installed some shackles. These do clip into place and they might stay there with friction alone, but I didn't want to risk losing them, so I glued them into place. Obviously, because I haven't installed the side skirts, I've also left the front fendery bits off. Two shovels go on both sides of the hull towards the front. These are very easy to get into place, and quite shovelly too. Exhaust pipes come next, on the rear of the tank obviously. These are keyed so they won't go on upside down or sideways unless you really want them to. Turns out, I didn't. Then come the exhaust covers, which I wasn't totally sure if I put on the correct side of the tank or not. They're both slightly different and the instructions aren't totally clear. I think this was an issue last time as well. This pair of C-shaped doobie watsits can be installed next. These are unsurprisingly easy to get into place. And a jack goes in under the exhausts. A little bit of nudging to get it at the right angle, and it's on. Next, some more shackles. These go on pretty much the same as on the front of the hull, and I suppose you could leave them off if you would prefer. Or maybe, to add some interest, you could connect some chain or a cable between them or something like that. As with the front fender parts, there are rear fenders that I've left off as well. And that's all of the plastic for this model done. Onwards to turret time, which I understand is a bit like hammer time, quite important. I start by gluing the commander's hatch into place. Obviously, if you want to use the included commander figure, you'll need to glue this into the open position. Then I glue the gun on. This is quite heavy and I think it might be a good idea to do some pinning with this for a bit of extra strength. I ended up having to hold this for a while before it set because I don't have a superglue accelerator, which I probably should invest in, but it did eventually bond, and then the turret is ready to attach to the hull. It does that the same way as the regular plastic turret would attach, with some little locking tabs, and it fits quite well. I do still have to do a little bit of neatening up along the bottom of the turret, so keep that in mind. Also, as you can see, you don't have to tilt the tank very far to get the turret to succumb to gravity and swing around. Probably be careful with that. I can see the turret accidentally swinging around and coming off the tank and falling to the ground and smashing, and that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Anyway, that's the heavy railgun armed King Tiger X for Konflikt 47 by Warlord Games completed. I think this is an excellent tank, and I do enjoy this kind of weird war, what-if, alternative history sci-fi kind of stuff. I also appreciate that Warlord just gives you the entire King Tiger kit with this, so if you want, you can use this for both Konflikt 47 and regular bolt action. And if you wanted to get really fiddly like I mentioned earlier, you could magnetize the collar part that goes on the hull for the Porsche turret. Or maybe you could build a base for that turret and use it as a gun emplacement. That sounds like a fun idea to me, and if you don't want to do those things, you get a load of bits for your bits box, which is always nice. It was initially an accident, but the more I look at this, the better I think it looks without the side skirts. It looks like it's been out on the battlefield for a while, and either superfluous bits have been removed, or just not been replaced after being damaged. I think it's interesting. The detailing on this kit is pretty nice. Obviously there was never a King Tiger X with this turret, but it still looks nice. And I have to say, as somebody who doesn't especially like working with resin, that this part is rather good. And I think this piece demonstrates that Warlord have been taking care to ensure high quality parts here. It's easy to just churn out part after part after part with air bubbles and quality issues and such, so this is nice to see. Also, one of the things I dislike about working with resin and metal is superglue, so there is that. Obviously this kind of thing is my opinion, and you should definitely take that with a grain of salt. Makes it taste a bit better. I rather enjoyed putting this kit together. It was quick and pretty easy. It didn't require too much cleanup and the parts went together as they should. There are a couple of bits and pieces that could benefit from a little bit of putty, but that's nothing unusual and certainly not a complaint. It didn't take a whole lot of time to build this, though I suppose omitting some of the parts did reduce assembly time just a little bit. Sometimes a happy little accident can yield an interesting result and save time. Anyway, if you want to watch me build stuff like this live, and partake in some of the good chat times, come join me on twitch.tv/Herbert_Erpaderp, or follow the convenient link in the description below. I build models a couple of times a week, and also, and you might not believe it, I also stream video games. Revolutionary, I know. Anyway, come hang out, it'll be fun. Like I mentioned earlier, I am a Warlord Games affiliate, so if you want to buy this kit and help a Herbert Erpaderp at no additional cost, there's a link to this kit, the regular plastic Tiger 2, and a little bit further down, a generic link to the Warlord store that will give me a small kickback from any purchases you make. A big thank you to everybody who's already done so, I do appreciate it. Also a big thank you to Warlord for sending me this kit, it makes me feel very special. If you have any questions or comments, I hear a good place for those is the comment section below. If you've built one of these and you would like to share some pictures, feel free to join our Discord community and share them there. That would be awesome. If you've not done so already, why not subscribe, follow, ring the bell, become a patron or YouTube member, or maybe just come say hi on Discord or Twitch. Links to all of my things are in the description below, and as always, I shall return soon, so until then, be excellent to each other, and thank you for watching. Farewell.